Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Let the filibustering begin.
Welcome to Nerd Pod.
Hello and welcome to Filibuster here on the Nerd Party Network. So after a bit of a brief break in our own city and country enjoying the Edinburgh Film Festival, myself and Dallas are back together again to discuss the range of films that we caught at the Edinburgh Film Festival, preview some upcoming interviews that we're going to be dropping in full down the line, and share our kind of experience of our first joint film festival together since kind of 2020, I guess, since the Glasgow Film Festival. So Dallas, how are you? It's the morning after the weekend before.
Yeah, and ironically, even though we were together at many films during the film festival, we are back to our usual position of recording in separate cities. Unfortunately, I had a very early megabus after the morning after the closing party, so unfortunately it didn't give us enough time to record. I didn't want to wake you up at 4 to do this, so I thought, let you have some sleep because it was crashing on your couch. I'll get home and we'll take a day to just mull things over and then come back together and share our thoughts on what was, for me, surprisingly good festival. I think if I was probably to listen back to the preview episode, I probably was maybe not all that enthused, but it turns out, certainly in terms of the programming, probably one of the better festivals I've been to in the last couple of years, I would say. Well, actually no, I'm going to say actually probably the last 3 or 4 years. Let's not just say the last couple of years because of COVID. It's probably you can't really do anything with statistics for the last couple of years, can you? Everything's skewed.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think I said as much on the podcast. I was like, I'm going to be off that week. I'm going to maybe see a few films here and there. I'm going to maybe do other things as well. Like, I didn't have the grandest of plans to really dive into the film festival, and just before we started recording this, I think over was it 9 days the festival ran? 8 days?
It was 9 days, despite what anyone said. It was not 8 days, it was 9 days, because you include the opening gala. That's day one. So yeah, I don't think they were, but yeah, for me it was 9 days.
Yeah, for over those 9 days, I ended up watching 19 films, which I was very surprised by, all in all. And yeah, I think it was a really high hit ratio this year for the festival. I thought, there was plenty of 4s and 3.5s in there, the odd little, poor film in my eyes. But, that's always the gamble you take with these types of events.
Oh yeah, no, I think I totaled it up as 14 for me, but I was only in the city for about 3.5 days. So I think 14 is not bad. I think I saw 6 films in Edinburgh and I caught 8 screeners at home. And yeah, like you, there was a lot of 4s. We were talking to our friend Gary from Cinema Perspective on the walk down to the closing gala, and it was like almost like second guessing ourselves maybe about the number of 4s. It's like, have I really given out the number of 4s, or am I in the midst of like festival fever where everything's really good, and should I then be purposely trying to balance it out by finding some 2s and 1s or something? But to be honest, I think there was just a really good selection of films this year. There was not a 1-star absolute stinker for me, actually, unlike Glasgow Film Festival. But I'm still not going to name that film because we try to remain positive here and we want to build up the good films, and we'll just choose to not shout about the bad ones. But I was very surprised, and yeah, we were gonna. Initially, I think because we'd seen so many films, we thought, we could do a top 5. But I had a feeling that out of the top 5, we probably would have both had 2 particular films which opened and closed the festival. So I figured, why not just talk about those separately? Because obviously they will also be getting more time on the A24 Project podcast, which you can listen to as well, by the way. So yeah, I thought we'd go with a top 3 of the non-gala films, shall we say.
Yeah, so for those that weren't familiar, the gala films was After Sun, so that's going to be out in, I think is it
18th of November in UK cinemas, and then on streaming on Mubi. Probably a couple of probably they actually normally wait about 3 or 4 months before putting it on. So, but yeah, no, they are committed to giving it a full cinema release. Still undated in the US with A24. But as soon as we know a date, I'm sure we'll be telling you all.
Yeah, so we'll be able to drop we got to interview the leads in that film. We got to interview the director, and we'll release sort of the full kind of interview later on when we do our sort of deep dive into After Sun. Here's just a little bit of a preview of what's to come from that.
Hi there, Charlotte. This film's gone through quite a lot of iterations over the years. How has the film kind of changed and evolved into what we kind of see now?
I mean, yeah, that's a hard question to answer because it's been a long road. It's been about 7 years. I think when I started writing it, it started out something a bit more traditionally structured and fictional, and over the course of making it became more personal, kind of drew more of my own memories and experiences into it, even though it's still very much fiction. I think that's part of the course of kind of writing your first feature, and bringing yourself into it more. And then writing is one stage, production is another, and editing is another. And of course, it's kind of written 3 times over the course of that.
What's it like when you go through such a kind of personal journey to bring something to life after 7 years to then share it with the world and have people respond and react?
Surreal. I'm still very new to it. I think this is only the second time I've presented the film in the world, and this is very different than the first time around. That was very, it could have had its own set of circumstances, and this is a lot of family, a lot of friends, a lot of people that mean a great deal to me who are responsible for me being here. So I think it's going to be a unique night.
So yeah, look forward to a future episode of the A24 project on After Sun. So that one has been excluded as well. But then also...
But it's still very, very good, I have to say. 5 stars from me.
Yeah, if it was in the mix, it would have been my film of the festival. So if you hear don't include that one on our top threes, that's not a slight on After Sun. It's definitely we're keeping our powder dry in that one. So the same.
I'm still too raw from the Under Pressure scene to be able to fully talk about it yet. I need a couple of weeks before I'm going to be able to do it.
Yeah, I've listened to that so much on my Spotify in the past few weeks. It was a song I've always enjoyed, not like top tier David Bowie, but yeah, since then I've been like, oh my god, but no, I'm not going to get into After Sun.
So if anyone in Edinburgh sees Lee running around doing his training and crying at the same time, it's probably because he's listening to Under Pressure by Queen and David Bowie.
Most definitely. And then also After Yang, which we reviewed all the way back in January, we've got to exclude that one from our list as well, but just to kind of briefly dive into it.
It would be in my top 5 interviews probably of all time, actually, I would say as well.
Absolutely, and here's a small preview of that.
I just want to talk about one of my favourite scenes of the year, the tea scene, which, Yang clearly has several roles within this family, whether it's sort of housekeeper, babysitter, but in that he almost turns sort of therapist to Colin Farrell, asking him questions, asking him to expand on his feelings and stuff like that. What was it like working with Colin in that? And I have to ask, where did what I thought to be a Werner Herzog impression? Yeah. Where did the idea for that come from? And were you aware that was going to happen?
I mean, I read it in the script.
Was it in the script? Was it? Yeah.
It was in the script. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to hear you talk about that tea scene, but just to quickly explain the Herzog. Yeah, it's from an actual documentary called On This Tea, which Herzog didn't direct, but he shows up in the middle of this documentary, and it's such a lovely scene because this guy who's just pursuing tea with all his heart is like, it's impossible to describe tea, and then Herzog just immediately describes it with such perfection, and so I knew when so in my mind as I was writing it, I knew that this was the thing that had sparked Jake to kind of pursue tea, and that he would have this memorized. Yeah.
I mean, that scene was so special. I mean, first of all, Colin learned how to make actual incredible tea, so it was like I just got to observe him making the tea, which was such a fun sort of exercise just to watch him do that. And you talked about the peace and quietness of the film. I mean, when we were filming that scene, you could literally hear a pin drop on that set. It was so just everyone was locked in, and there was a part of me that was trying to fight Justin's visceral response to acting with Colin Farrell in terms of my admiration and fear and this is Colin Farrell. And then I had a moment while we were filming that where I was like, wait, I could actually use this, because in the same way that Justin feels this way about Colin Farrell, Yang feels this way about Jake. He's someone that he has seen from afar and admired, but not really known and has seen as an enigma in many ways. And so I thought that was just the sort of perfect blending of real life and art, and I got to use all of that for the scene. And we've talked about this before, but like when Colin Farrell like looks at you, there's something about his presence and his energy that really feels like you feel seen. And for Yang, all he wants is to feel seen. And those are the moments where I think Yang feels most connected to Jake. And it's like leading up to this climax where you feel like they're finally connected, and then there's that moment where he drinks the tea and you hear the metal inside of him, and like that connection is immediately lost. And it's a heartbreaking scene for me to watch, as it was to play, because you finally feel like they're getting to this place where they can be a real father and son, and then reality hits them in the face.
Yeah, it's a great observation too about him almost playing the role of a therapist for this, because you do get a sense that at one point Colin did have this real passion for this craft, and there was something that has been missing, and that conversation really sort of resurrects it and rekindles, and also has, they find themselves with this possibility of connection. But I also love the idea too that it awakens something in Yang, like his own longing to have a connection to this thing that he sees Jake making, because it has referenced his own Asianness. And it was really lovely to see them play it.
So yeah, if people want to hear our full thoughts on After Yang, we've got an A24 Project episode from all the way back in earlier this year. But just to briefly talk about it, Dallas, we both watched it on sort of a screener. I had mine like Apple shared to my TV. How did it feel to watch it on one of the biggest kind of screens in Edinburgh?
It felt very, very good, to be honest, because, it was a 5-star film for me when I watched it on my laptop back in the, I think, because I was on a press pass, so I don't think I was actually able to port it to my TV, so I had to watch it on, or did I? I might have been able to actually watch it on my TV, but it was like, I wouldn't say a completely different experience, but it was certainly an enhanced experience of watching it, because one thing I hadn't realised was the change. I do love an aspect ratio change. So seeing that the sort of memories were sort of filmed in 185, and then the normal world was done in 235, was very exciting for me to see. And yeah, certain things just hit differently. I actually also somehow managed to completely forget about the ending, about the sort of compressed memories which were opened up, and how that linked to another particular character. So, it was great to see it on the big screen, but also I think it was also enhanced a bit by being able to sit down and chat with Kogo Nada and Justin Min before. We got to, as you just heard, we got to speak to them briefly on the red carpet, but we both got, I think you got about 15 minutes, I got about 12 minutes with them. Lots of great questions, and lots of, thankfully, even better answers to those questions. So I think we're going to put together an extra special After Yang interview episode for you to listen to, and we'll probably drop that when After Yang is out in the UK in cinemas, and then on Sky Cinema from the 22nd of September.
Yeah, so a lot to look forward to. So let's dive into this, Dallas. What was do you want to do one at a time, or do you want to share your top 3 picks in one exciting go?
Oh, let's do time about. It's always fun to find out if we've actually got the the same list or not.
So let's hear what did you pick as number 3?
So number 3 for me is Resurrection. Written and directed by Andrew Simmons, and this stars Rebecca Hall as a woman who seemingly has it all together. She's got a high-powered job, she's got a lovely daughter. She hooks up with a married man at work, but she's in complete control of that relationship. She calls, he comes running, and it seems like she's got it all. And then one day she's at a conference, she looks over, she thinks she sees someone. She's not sure if she has, but it invokes a massive physical reaction in her, a massive panic attack. She runs home, and then slowly but surely, her life just seems to disintegrate after that. She's paranoid, she's scared, she doesn't know what she's doing. This affects her relationship with her daughter. And slowly but surely, you get the backstory as to who this particular person is and was in her life. And I mean, that's actually told through an incredible 7-minute long single take sequence where Rebecca Hall recounts this, I guess, psychological and emotional torture and abuse that she suffered from this person. And to sort of quote Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, that was the greatest acting I've ever seen in my entire life. For me, Rebecca Hall is the finest actress of a generation. She's shown it time and time again through the likes of Christine, The Night House, and here in Resurrection. They are all very, very dark roles, that showcase what she can do. I'm just hoping that soon, she gets a nice, fluffy romantic comedy, probably one that isn't directed by Woody Allen, let's face it. But for me, it is like an acting masterclass, and then in the third act, it goes completely bananas, and I'm very excited to see what audiences make of that. In particular, Kim, who often guests on the podcast, I'm sure she'll have a lot to say on it as well. But for me, it's like it goes to wild places, but for me, it goes to the place where I thought it was going to, and I commend them for sticking the landing on that. And yeah, this is a perfect one for the sort of late night horror crowd, I'd say.
Yeah, this was one I enjoyed it, but not perhaps as much as you. I guess you got to experience it in the cinema. I ended up watching a screener copy of it, which I always think
horror
makes a
films
huge difference.
always play slightly different when you've got an audience and you can sort of hear and almost sort of feel sort of like the revulsion and fear sort of growing in the audiences, or just the general sort of WT. What the am I just watching? I have no idea. It's like that's I think it always adds something to a horror film. So I always like to watch them with an audience. I often go to cinema alone, but sometimes like comedies and horrors, I always think feel and play slightly differently when you've got that sort of communal sort of experience.
Yeah, I was one of those things. I'd spend like 2 days dodging everyone wanting to talk about that movie. Of like, people are like, so what did you think of the ending? And it's like,
of course, yes, because you'd paused it after the monologue, and it was like, oh, there's still a lot to come.
Yeah, I had so much to kind of dodge for a few days. So yeah, it was a bit of a worry about catching that film in time. So yeah, certainly one of the most unforgettable endings I've ever seen. So hopefully people get the chance to catch that one in a cinema, but I think it is going to Shudder, so I think unless it's a Fright Fest, I would doubt it's going to be shown in cinemas here. Would that be right?
Yeah, because it's an old one, because it's Shudder, but it also was, they thanked Universal and it had the Universal logo, so it seems odd, but maybe it was Universal it was IFC Midnight in Shudder in the States, so yeah, I'll need to check up on that and find out whether or not it will get a small cinema release here through Universal, because they do have a horror sort of department and wing of their aisle, but yeah, I need to check up on that one. So there's still a glimmer of hope, but if not, Shudder is, it'll play well to people who have a Shudder subscription.
Yeah, so I went for my third choice, and that was Full Time. So this was a last minute catch in an afternoon for me, and I'd heard some good buzz from it from friends that went to see it in Venice last year. So it took nearly a year, but it's made its way to Scotland, and it was introduced by the programmer as Uncut Gems for Single Women. And you're like, oh my gosh, I think that's become the new thing of like,
is it tense? Does it make you have a panic attack? Oh, it must be like Uncut Gems.
Yeah. It's speed on a bus, it's speed on a train, it's speed on a boat. That's become the new shorthand. But I really, really enjoyed this one. It's all about sort of this woman called Julie, that she works as sort of like a head kind of housekeeper at a hotel, but she gets an interview for a much more meaningful job where she's going to be able to raise her kids a little bit better. Appropriately, I watched this during a train strike, and that is happening in Paris. Kind of bog standard with Paris, these sorts of things. So yeah, she has been constantly thwarted by train strikes, travel disruption, and issues as she tries to get around Paris to get to the interview, get home to see her family.
The old lady who lives down the street.
Yeah, the old lady that lives down the street, all these sorts of things, and it's just constantly just like so much frustration for her. And you know, you're kind of hoping she's going to get this interview. She's having to sneak off from her current job to get it. There's just so much kind of microscopic risks and stress kind of taking place during this film. So, you know, very much it should be added up the workers, and good luck to them and their strikes. But yeah, it's an interesting kind of story. I suppose more, I would, you know, think for some people they might look at it and go, oh, actually the negative aspect of this is like what the strikers are doing, but actually it's perhaps how about sort of capitalism is sort of impacting these people, and you know, not providing that degree of flexibility during kind of strikes like that, and you know, the challenges of living in a city versus having to live on sort of the outskirts of a city to raise a family and to afford to do something like that as well. So yeah, a fantastic performance at the heart by Laurie Calame, who I wasn't familiar with, but I heard she's in that sort of that Call the Agent show that's very popular, I think, on Amazon. So yeah, it was a very stressful watch and so on, and there's a particularly stressful scene where I think every single person I spoke to really thought the worst was going to happen in that moment.
Well,
and,
it is a French film.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, it definitely earns its Uncut Gems, you know, comparisons at times as well. So yeah, one I'd highly recommend. Again, I think it could be good to watch at home, but I think in the cinema where you feel that tension of like, oh my god, she's cut a cucumber, what's going to go wrong with a cucumber, or she's assembling a trampoline, and you start to fear the worst about putting together sort of the springs on it. It's one of those things that really gets in your head in a cinema.
Yeah, I was going to have this one on my list, but because you brought it up, I'll switch it out so we can talk about something else. But yeah, for me, it was one of my films of the festival. It was a friend James had recommended it because he saw it at Venice, and I was like, read the description, and yeah, it sounded to me like it was going to be she has to get from her job to her interview and back in like the same day while there's this sort of train strike going on. And so I thought it's just going to take place. Of course, it's going to be like a sort of in real time sort of film, but it turned out not to be. It was like looking at it over sort of 3 days as she gets through various stages of the job interview, and each day the impact of the transport strikes and stuff is getting worse and worse. How it's affecting her job is getting worse and worse. The old lady is getting fed up with having to look after the kids and stuff like that. And like you say, it was screening in Edinburgh during a rail strike. I look forward to the sequel set during bin strikes. And yeah, it was just like so stressful. But it's probably the most socially relevant sort of film I've seen recently. It sort of speaks to the heart of what everyone is going through with this. You know, it's set in France or whatever, but you know, there is a lot to relate to here with the cost of living crisis and stuff, and the fact that people are having to go to work, you know, work more hours and stuff like that, but then, you know, there's an issue of they can't afford childcare because childcare is so expensive, and it's like, how do you juggle all these things? You know, as we said, the woman is a single parent, and you know, she can't get hold of her ex-husband, you know, to get alimony and stuff like that. So it's all very, very stressful, and like you say, yeah, you because it is a French film, it's not a British film, you think that it could potentially go to a very, very, very dark place towards the end, whether it does or not. But yeah, it's like everyone, like you say, I've spoken to a few people and asked them the same question, and they were like, oh yeah, no, I could have totally seen that happening. And you're like, yeah. And it's so, this one does not have UK distribution yet, and I hope that changes after the Edinburgh International Film Festival. I believe it was submitted through the general submissions process. It wasn't like headhunted by anyone in particular on the programming team. It came through submissions. So I really hope that the positive reviews and word of mouth that's come out of this festival mean that somebody picks it up for a UK release, because this film really does need to be seen by as many people as possible. I thought it was fantastic.
So what's another film that needs to be seen by as many people as possible, Dallas?
Okay, because that was, I want to search that one out, and this one is a film that you definitely can see, and definitely can see in a couple of days' time, and that is Official Competition. And this is a Spanish film which stars Penelope Cruz, Antonio Banderas, and Oscar Martinez, and it's about a 80-year-old sort of business tycoon who's pondering his retirement and wondering, what are people going to remember me for? And he's sort of sitting there looking out the window, thinks about building a bridge, putting his name on it, and then donating it to the state so that, everyone can cross this bridge and, they'll think of his name. Then he goes, actually, why don't I make a movie? And so he decides to become a producer on a movie that wins awards. So he buys the rights to a Nobel Prize winning book, which he has not read, but assumes it must be good because it won a Nobel Prize. He hires the most expensive and visionary director in Spain to direct it, hires the two most famous actors in Spain to star in it. They've never worked together before, and there's a reason for that. One of them is basically a Stanislavski's method style, actor who came from the theatre, and the other one, played by Antonio Banderas, is the one who's become a Hollywood star who just will turn up, read the lines, because that's all that I should need to do, because I'm a huge star. Why would I need to do any more? And for me, it's the funniest film I've seen this year. It is, for anyone who is interested in the awards season race, anyone on film Twitter, I cannot see them not seeing a lot of what goes on in here and just smirking and going, yep, I can totally see this. It's so spot on in its satire of what people are willing to do in order to try and create something, not to entertain or whatever, but specifically to try and win awards and stuff like that. And in particular, there's a scene at the end when the film gets to a film festival where there is a press junket, and yes, there was quite a few laughs at that as people awkwardly recognize themselves in the questions that were being asked as well. So this is out on Friday from Curzon and highly recommended.
Yeah, this is one I still haven't had the chance to watch yet. This would have been my 20th movie, or will be my 20th movie. I've got the screener just sitting in my inbox to watch. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to watching this one. I know how much hype there was coming out of that one, but equally, my second one came with a lot of hype too, and that was Owen Klein's Funny Pages. So I'm not going to talk too much about this one because we've got our full review coming out on the A24 project later this week about that one. But, I think if we all make fun of the Twisted Genius kind of trailer drop, but I think someone could go kind of like, you can imagine one from that wanking child in The Squid and the Whale is Owen Klein's Funny Pages. So yeah, this one's about sort of a teenage cartoonist who kind of rejects the comforts of his suburban life in a misguided quest for a soul, which sort of makes it seem like a bit more highfalutin than perhaps it is. This is one that is directed by produced by the Safdie brothers.
It's like Uncut Gems meets Clerks.
Yeah, and it's one of these ones, there's a lot of the kind of familiar faces like Jennifer Canavetti, who we've heard about kind of before on some of our A24 project episodes, has done the casting again on this. So she's someone that, with things like the Safdie brother films, Euphoria, really dives into New York and Los Angeles and Instagram and social media to find new and exciting kind of talent.
This guy. That guy's in
this guy. Yeah, he is in it. So yeah, there's a lot of familiar tropes and faces from kind of the Safdie brothers world. So yeah, this one was fantastic and some of the best laughs I got at the festival. So this is one I'm looking forward to really diving into with yourself this week as well. So look forward to that review on the A24 project. So Dallas, what was your number one pick?
Number one pick, I have a feeling there's potential, because you haven't mentioned it yet, that we might have the same one at number one. But for me, it is Lola.
Correct. Number excellent one for me, yeah.
Science fiction film meets found footage, but set in World War II, using sort of black and white 16mm recordings. And yeah, I mean, on paper, it sounds like, very well-worn genres and tropes about, getting messages from the future and using them to then influence the past and stuff like that. But for me, it completely worked. It's set around the story of these two sisters who build this device and they think, oh, it's going to be great. We can listen to the future. We become fans of David Bowie, Bob Dylan. We get to watch, Stanley Kubrick films, place the occasional Biff Tannen style on horse races and stuff like that. But this film, the filming, it's being documented by one of the sisters. All this filming is taking place in the late 1930s, early 40s, and as anyone will be aware, there's a world war around the corner, and they decide to try and do good with their machine and try and save some lives here and there, and they get sort of basically co-opted in by the military to help the war effort against the Nazis and Hitler. But of course, what one of them has always realized, but the other one maybe naively didn't, is that, of course, changing I guess it would be the present, could potentially have an impact on the future. And yeah, you then get into the sort of efficacies of using information to change the world. And yeah, I mean, for me, one of the most impressive things about this is, well, just the look of it and how they combine their filming with archive footage and inserting people into archive footage. But for me, I think from a time travel perspective, I think initially I had questions about it, but actually the way that the whole film wraps up, I think it's pretty airtight in terms of its effect on the space-time continuum.
Yeah, I was really impressed by this one. I think it was one of my recommendations prior to the festival, that I was really keen to see these kind of uses of different format and the kind of the macro budget that was going to be used for this film. But I didn't expect it to be as emotional as it was, sort of following these kind of two sisters and how different they approach, someone that really embraces being able to access kind of culture from the future and becoming these huge David Bowie, Bob Dylan fans. I think watching it in a cinema in particular, when I think it was Life on Mars that played over the cinema speakers, it just really hit that special note. And I can't imagine what it must be like in the 1940s to hear someone like, as alien as David Bowie in that time. So I really was fascinated, by sort of the kind of techniques that were used in the film. And I was there for a Q&A after the film as well, and they really were able to kind of dive into sort of the technical aspects about sort of how they used a mix of the archive footage to kind of produce what we saw, or sometimes that they would be like, oh, we're maybe missing something here, diving into the archive footage and building things around that as well. So yeah, there was something really, I thought, really pretty special to be honest. And I thought the performances from Emma Appleton, who's really starting to kind of make a name for herself with her mix of sort of TV work and films as well, really stood out. And Stephanie Martini, I remember from Makeup as well. So yeah, I thought it was a fantastic cast, and one I'm just, I really hope we'll get a release. I think they alluded to in the Q&A that there will be a release down the line for Lola. So I think this will be one that will really kind of catch people's attention. And yeah, definitely one of my favourite films of the year so far. So one I hope will really get an audience, and yeah, will lead to sort of some exciting and interesting discussions afterwards.
Yeah, and I think actually, speaking of Makeup, do you know who I remembered was in Makeup? Joseph Quinn, a.k.a. poster boy Eddie Munson from Stranger Things #4. So you'll need to watch Makeup to get another hit from your new love, I guess. But yeah, no, it is being, I think, distributed by Cowtown Pictures, an Irish-based distribution company. So yes, I believe. They're certainly sort of sharing positive reviews and stuff like that. So I think they're definitely building to a release. We just don't have a date yet. But yeah, for anyone who is like a fan of any, like the sort of micro budget sort of time travel movies, like something like Coherence or Primer, Looper, even sort of something like that, where it's not sort of going back to try and save the world, or not have sex with your own mother or something like that, then yeah, there's a lot to enjoy this, even if this one actually does manage to shoehorn in a Back to the Future style song and dance number as well, which was a nice touch, I thought.
Yeah, so definitely a nice mix of films that I think we saw over the festival, and yeah, I think a huge lot of love and respect goes out to the kind of the people that pulled off the festival from the kind of the programmers, but the volunteers, and it was really good to just be able to have the festival back again, enjoy the social aspect, see friends, to talk about films again, to hear disagreements and everything like that. That's what a festival's about for me. And obviously this is just our first dip into dipping in this is our first kind of go round at kind of reviewing the festival, but looking forward to diving into it more with things like our Funny Pages review on the A24 project, our After Yang interviews, our After Sun coverage. We're gonna really milk this for the next couple of months.
Yeah, no, I mean, for me, yeah, like I said at the start, I probably wasn't, all that into that, because you're thinking, well, they didn't get like the big hitters, but I'm off to Venice in a couple of weeks. You've got London coming up, but for me, I found this to be the most productive film festival for me in terms of output and stuff like that. Because of when I was down, there were no press screenings in the morning. They only sort of happened midweek. So I found that I was watching films in the evening, and then I could get up in the morning and early afternoon, write the reviews and sort of stay ahead of where I was. We got to cover 2 red carpets. Got sit-down interviews with Coco Nada, Justin Min. I got a wonderful 25 minutes with Fatma Mohammed from Peter Strickland. I was going to say Flux Gourmet. Every Peter Strickland film. People will probably best know her from In Fabric as the sort of shop assistant, Miss Luckmore. She's just got an incredible, unique voice, and it was fantastic to speak to her as well. I know a lot's been said about the festival moving back to August to take advantage of all the people in Edinburgh. Whether or not that's worked in terms of have people forgone the book festival and the Fringe festival in order to see films instead, I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait for their press release when they come up with the busiest film festival since pre-pandemic years, since 2004 when it was moved to June in the first place. I don't know. I mean, there were some elements which I missed, which was probably, I think, being able to participate in the industry program. We didn't get the karaoke nights and the quiz nights. There wasn't really a place for the press hub that they usually had, because they used to have the Traverse Theatre for that. But obviously, with everything else going on, they were very limited in terms of spaces that could be used for anything which wasn't screening films. But I had a great time. I managed to catch up with a lot of people. The opening gala was good. The closing gala was an absolute riot in Dynamic Earth. There was a group that recreated the opening credit dance from After Yang. I think pretty much spot on. I saw the cast and crew of one of the horror films, Sissy, absolutely tearing it up on the dance floor, which really only sort of started once we moved through to the DJ area. I noticed there was hardly anyone there, and then when we moved through about an hour before the closing, everyone just seemed to follow us, and we were the leaders, I guess.
People should be, we should lead again, and hopefully people will check out the films that we've recommended today. And yeah, we'll be sure to share all our interviews and reviews and coverage as we continue to kind of dive into it in the coming weeks. So thanks everyone for listening, and thanks everyone for putting on a great festival. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.
Welcome to Nerd Party.